What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 15 overall players for the 2021 fantasy football season, how and why we came to those conclusions. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, let us hear it in the comment section as well. If you agree, disagree with these rankings, along with any other questions you guys might have, we will do our best to answer them all. And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you can want at a great value. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get into it. And a quick, very important note here. These rankings are based on PPR scoring, and that's going to play a big factor into this, as you will shortly see. But with that in mind, we begin with Christian McCaffrey as our 101. Pretty chalk, pretty boring, but to be expected. Look, McCaffrey, when he's healthy, the guy is a PPR cheat code. He is somebody that is involved in that offense no matter the quarterback. I've said this every single time when I talk about him first overall, when I talk about, my running back rankings. McCaffrey is the focal point of the Carolina offense. They pay him that way. They use him that way. He's a wide receiver and a running back all in one. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think that his pass catching volume will be as high this season as it's been in years prior, just because there's a lot of targets there in Carolina now. But either way, to me, he's very, very safe. I mean, the fact that he's still the 101 pick a year after, missing the majority of the season, despite having an average offensive line, it speaks volumes to the talent of McCaffrey. So I think right now here in any type of PPR formats, he's really the standard 101 pick. But let's go to number 2, and this is where the fireworks begin. I already know what people are going to say. How can you have Austin Ekeler second overall? You're an absolute lunatic. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, hear me out. First and foremost, this narrative that Austin Ekeler is injury prone. Other than last season, he had played a full 16 games, every year, other than one where he played 14 of 16 games. So last year was really the first year where he kind of missed time. So let's kind of dispel that rumor about Austin Ekeler being injury prone. Next, Ekeler is on one of the most improved offenses in the NFL as far as the offensive line is concerned. I think the Chargers have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They had tremendous upgrades in free agency and in the NFL draft. That will not only help out Justin Herbert, it will help out Austin Ekeler. For all of you that love that volume for running backs, Austin Ekeler will rival guys like McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. You've got Keenan Allen on that offense. Who else? Who's the guy you're going to point to after that that's going to challenge Ekeler? Hunter Henry's not there. Mike Williams, he's had time to emerge, hasn't happened. Ekeler is the 1B to the 1A of Keenan Allen. He's going to get plenty of volume. I think he has a serious chance to get close to 1,000 yards receiving. He's basically the second best receiver on that team. And he's got a quarterback that's going to air it out like nobody else. We saw the promise in Justin Herbert. I love Ekeler. Anthony Lynn is now gone as well. So I think we're going to see usage from Ekeler that, is unprecedented. The fact that the coaching staff there has connections to guys like Alvin Kamara, and we know the success he's had before, I think you should have a lot of confidence in Ekeler and the type of usage you're going to see with him. He's somebody that's obviously being drafted, towards the end of the first round, maybe even in the second round, depending on your leagues. I think he's an absolute steal. This shows you how confident I would be in him in reality. So drafting him as a top 3, top 5 guy is an absolute no-brainer for me. But let's move on here to Alvin Kamara. To me, McCaffrey, Ekeler, and Kamara are kind of all in their own category as far as PPR guys are concerned. Now, Kamara, the only reason I have him ranked a little bit lower is because the quarterback situation is uncertain. If you told me that Jameis Winston is going to be the quarterback for the Saints all year long, no quarterback changes, I'd have Kamara above Ekeler. And honestly, I might have him above Christian McCaffrey as well. He's got the better offensive line. and he's just as involved. Without Michael Thomas, you could argue he's the best pass catcher on that team. I think the volume is going to be there big time for him as well. Not worried right now if it's Taysom Hill or Winston. The reason I say that primarily is because without Michael Thomas, you're going to have to feed Kamara targets in the passing attack, and that's going to extremely, to a large extent, raise his floor, which in PPR formats, very, very important and makes him a rather safe pick. To me, he's a top 3 guy, and that's where he is being drafted. Moving on, we've got Dalvin Cook, 4th overall. And with Dalvin Cook, look, he's not as highly involved in the passing attack as these other guys, but he also has a higher rushing ceiling than these top 3 players as well. And to be fair, he is on a run-first team. The first player we can say that in regards to, as opposed to McCaffrey, Ekeler, and Kamara. Dalvin Cook, the Vikings, they want to utilize him and for him to be that focal point on their team. They want to be run first because Kirk Cousins is better suited at the quarterback position to be a game manager. They don't want to put it all on his shoulders week in and week out. Dalvin Cook does his thing, and then, everything else works from there. I will say Cook is an underrated pass catcher as well. 50 receptions on the year. I think that's absolutely doable, if not more. If you guys were worried about Dalvin Cook, always, keep in mind, handcuff him with Alexander Mattison. Cook is usually the second player drafted in mock drafts, regardless PPR standard, so you're going to see him go in the top 3 and the top 5 for sure. And this lines up with that. Again, me here, I love Dalvin Cook. No problem taking him 2nd overall. I think with these top 4 picks, it's kind of splitting hairs, to be honest with you. I love all of them. You could convince me to kind of shuffle the order a little bit with all these names. So really nothing against Dalvin Cook, just I put a little bit more weight in the pass-catching abilities of guys like McCaffrey, Ekeler, and Kamara. But Dalvin Cook is a great all-around running back. He did finish as the number 2 running back in fantasy football last year. That wasn't a fluke. The guy's an absolute stud. But let's move on. 5th overall to Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans. Now, this is the category where we've got a little bit more of a, one-dimensional running back, because Derrick Henry not going to really contribute to the passing attack really at all compared to Cook, Kamara, these last couple of names. If he gets like 20 receptions on the season, that's probably your expectation, 20 to 25. That even might be too optimistic. But at the same time, his rushing upside, 2,000 yards. Touchdown upside, huge. So that's what makes him so valuable on an offense that, again, wants to feature him, similar with the Vikings and Cook, run-first team. And Derrick Henry is the guy that makes it all go. Good offensive line. Now, I do have him ranked higher above some wide receivers, even though this is PPR scoring. And at the end of the day, they might put together some more points. But the fact that it's the running back position kind of sways me here and makes Derrick Henry a little bit more valuable in my eyes. So that's the logic there. But I alluded to it here. You're going to see a wide receiver run starting at 6th overall. We've got Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers. And he's a guy with Aaron Rodgers obviously still in town. Well, Davante Adams is as surefire of a wide receiver as you could want. I'm not worried about Randall Cobb coming back to town to take away targets from him. We've seen both those guys coexist before, and Davante Adams be the alpha. He's by far the better wide receiver, much more so in his prime than Randall Cobb, so I'm not worried about those things at all. Last season, he finishes the number 1 overall wide receiver despite missing multiple games. That's insanely impressive. High touchdown upside, high volume upside, high receiving upside. That's what happens when Aaron Rodgers, you're one of his favorite targets. He's going to go to you over and over and over. And there really aren't any wide receivers there that make me nervous that Adams is going to lose targets to. If you're worried that opposing defenses are going to focus in on Davante Adams, that's been the case for the last 2-3 years. Adams has been really the only guy for Aaron Rodgers since then. And Aaron Rodgers is so good, and Davante Adams is so good as well, that seemingly it just doesn't matter who the opposing defenders are. Rodgers will find Adams, and Adams will do his thing. So right now, you give me a full season of Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers, I think it's hard not to have him as the top overall wide receiver, and usually you're going to see him go, in the middle of the first round towards the end of the first round. Moving on, we've got Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. Now, the reason I have him ranked a little bit higher than Tyreek Hill, which again, all these three guys are one right after the other here, that's not a mistake. It's by design. I have him ranked a little bit higher just because I think he's going to get a little bit more volume in the passing attack, which again, in PPR, that makes a difference. If this was standard, I would actually have Tyreek as my number one wide receiver. But again, in PPR, I think it's really splitting hairs here. Diggs last season showed you what he could do with Josh Allen taking that next step up. Now, if you want to make the case that Diggs may be a little bit riskier compared to Adams and Tyreek Hill because Josh Allen hasn't produced on that elite level consistently, then I understand it again, but I still think he's proven that he belongs in the tier 1 conversation as well. What he did in his first season in Buffalo, very, very impressive. So Diggs here as the number 2 wide receiver in PPR scoring, slightly above Tyreek Hill, who comes in at number 8, specifically because, again, of the volume and the receptions I anticipate. But look, Tyreek Hill, that's no slight against him. I love Tyreek Hill. He's 8th overall here, our 3rd tier 1 wide receiver. You're going to, again, see him go towards the end of the first round, similar to all these wide receivers that we've mentioned up until this point in time. He plays with Patrick Mahomes. Opposite Travis Kelce, maybe that's like the only knock against him because Travis Kelce could very well outproduce him in yards and, maybe even touchdowns. But I love the fact that he'll put to rest some of those concerns about consistency issues last season. He was absolutely sensational. And with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, on one of the most high-scoring teams in the NFL, it's hard not to love Tyreek Hill. He has the highest big play upside compared to any other wide receiver. I think that is for sure. That's why he's so valuable in standard formats. If you're in a league where you've got some, crazy bonuses for big plays, it's definitely tough not to rank Tyreek Hill as the number 1 guy. But here, for standard scoring, things like that, standard formats in leagues, this is where we've got Tyreek Hill at the 8th spot. But let's continue to scroll down our list. We go to number 9 with Ezekiel Elliott. I really like Ezekiel Elliott. He's a guy that's probably going to be going, 5th, 6th, 7th overall at the latest. He's somebody, Zeke, that's maybe a little bit forgotten about because the emergence of Dak Prescott, and now you've got some focus on guys like CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and the offensive line, not quite as elite as it was a couple years ago, but I think Ezekiel Elliott is still a very viable running back. If you want to rank him above these 3 wide receivers that we just had, no problem with it at all. He's somebody that I would say similar to a Dalvin Cook, similar type of upside, dual threat ability. He's going to probably, when healthy, the guy going to go between 1,300, 1,500 yards. Receptions probably pretty close to that 50 number as well. The only thing is, again, I think he is on a team that's a little bit more pass heavy. So I'm not sure that he's going to be as heavily utilized as in years prior just because he doesn't necessarily have to be. But we'll see, maybe if Dak Prescott, if he doesn't quite, progress as we would like from his injury, then the Cowboys lean more on Ezekiel Elliott. And that's also partially why we have Zeke here as well, because Dak, he's still coming off a major injury, so we don't know how he's going to do, how his health will hold up for the full season. So a little bit risk there, not necessarily directly with Zeke, but indirectly with his quarterback. But either way, you're going to see Zeke go as a top 5, top 6 running back. So I would say still a great value pick to be an RB1. Moving on to our 10th overall guy here, we have got Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. I really like Aaron Jones as the end of the first round guy, a guy that's kind of underrated. The last 2 years been a top 5 running back. The only, qualm that I have with Aaron Jones is he can be inconsistent. So there's peaks and valleys is what I mean. 1 week, you're going to see him go for 40-plus points. Might even be 2, 3 weeks in a row. But guess what? It's not going to happen every single week. I'd even say you won't see 20-plus points from him every single week. There's going to be weeks where Aaron Jones gets you like 10 points, and it'll be a little bit frustrating. The reason for that is the Green Bay Packers, volume-wise, they don't want to put it all on the shoulders of Aaron Jones. That's why they utilized Jamal Williams the way that they did when he was there. That's why now we expect A.J. Dillon to also have a role in this offense. And for that reason, I do think we're going to see Aaron Jones with some of those similar type of outings where he absolutely wins you a week, but then other weeks where it's like, oh, how did Aaron Jones only put up like 10, 15 points? Yeah, I mean, he's so good. He's on such an electric offense, but that's just the way that the Green Bay Packers kind of utilize him, and they're not afraid to go with a hot hand approach sometimes if Aaron Jones lets you down. But the good thing is Aaron Rodgers is such a big fan of Aaron Jones, utilizes him so much. Again, you could argue he's the second best pass catcher on that team, that Aaron Jones will likely be challenging for a top 5 running back finish yet again. And towards the end of the first round, that is tremendous, tremendous value. Next, we go to Travis Kelce. And with Travis Kelce here, 11th overall, honestly, some people are going to be drafting Kelce in the middle of the first round, but this more has to do with the fact that I just don't value tight ends as much as some other individuals. I think that it pays more to get a wide receiver 1 or an RB1 in the first round. Also, Travis Kelce getting a little bit older. I'm not saying that he's going to all of a sudden fall off this season, but I just don't know how many more elite years we have of Travis Kelce left. He is playing opposite Tyreek Hill, so the same argument you could make about Tyreek Hill, getting some targets away from him from Kelce. You can make the same argument about Kelce and Tyreek, but at the end of the day, they both play with Patrick Mahomes. Everything that I said about Tyreek Hill holds here with Travis Kelce. I do still think that he warrants top 15 consideration because he's essentially a wide receiver 1 at the tight end spot, and that is very, very valuable once you get to a certain point. And I think, that certain point is right around this 11, 12, 13, 14 spot. If you want to have him, plus minus 2 spots on these type of rankings, I have no problem with it whatsoever. But at the end of the day, he's somebody that's probably going to go for 1,400 yards, close to that. You get that type of production at tight end and PPR scoring with high touchdown upside as well. That's extremely valuable. I mean, the last, I think, 5 years or 4 years, he's had over 1,000 yards receiving. That's absolutely unheard of at the tight end position. So, yeah, Kelce is definitely valuable and warrants this ranking. But let's move on here to our number 12 guy on the list, and maybe a little bit controversial, Saquon Barkley. How can you have Barkley this low? Well, here we have to take into account risk. And I've said this before, but in the first round, even in the second round, the name of the game is minimizing risk. And right now, look, yes, Barkley is off the PUP list, but there's still some risk associated with this thing. First and foremost, the thing I'm the most worried about, forget about the offensive line, which we'll touch on later. Barkley is coming off a major injury, an ACL. Like, other than Adrian Peterson, show me running backs that have come off the ACL and been absolutely amazing immediately thereafter. It's not a long list, and I realize that Saquon Barkley is an absolute freak, but it doesn't mean that he's automatically going to do what Adrian Peterson did. And so for that reason, that's what I'm most nervous about here with Barkley. And right now, he's probably going towards the middle to the end of the first round. Again, you're going to have those people that say the reward is higher than the risk. I completely understand that. And I always do say sometimes in fantasy, you have to take the risk to kind of put your team above others. But I'm just not sure I would take that risk so early on in the first round. But either way, it's hard to ignore the talent here. I realize that. I think some people would be a lot more bullish on Barkley. I think having him ranked here at 12th overall is actually pretty conservative. And the reason I say that is because you've still got that offensive line to deal with, which isn't elite, but at the same time, we've seen Barkley finish as a top 5 running back despite that offensive line in years prior. Look at his rookie season. But at the end of the day, Barkley is a top 3, top 5 running back in the NFL, if not the best NFL running back when healthy. The question again is, how is he going to react? Are we going to see the volume? Are the Giants going to put him in immediately week 1? Are they going to limit those snaps? Those are all still things that we don't know the answer to, because ultimately, even though Barkley is practicing right now, the Giants could still choose to limit him or even sit him in week 1. So still some question marks there. My approach with Barkley, I say this all the time, if you decide to take the risk on him, which I'm not saying you shouldn't or you should, either way, But the only thing that I would advise if you take him is then to draft immediately a safe running back option in the next round. Now, moving on, though, here we go to DeAndre Hopkins with the 13th overall rank. He's somebody that I think is right after that top tier group of wide receivers. I think he's somebody in PPR formats that's very, very valuable. He's going to get you a lot of catches. Now, yes, his big play upside, maybe not as high as that of Hill, Diggs, and Adams, but he's on an electric offense, very high scoring with a great young quarterback in Kyler Murray. He's probably going to be top 3 in terms of receptions on the year for wide receivers. And again, for PPR scoring, that is incredibly, incredibly valuable. We'll see about the touchdown upside, about the yardage, but I think he'll probably be right around 1,300 yards. So if you draft him as the 4th, 5th overall wide receiver, that's absolutely logical. And I think this is right around the point in our rankings where wide receiver value is at a just all-time high. That's why we kind of have to highlight it here. And you see that with our 14th ranked overall guy as well in Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons. And honestly, if you want to have Calvin Ridley higher, I'd have zero problems with that as well. Again, this is more so because of the PPR aspect of it. If it's half-point PPR scoring or standard scoring, I would have Calvin Ridley as a top 3 wide receiver, no questions about it. I think he's on the level of Tyreek Hill in that case because he's in a very pass-heavy team with Matt Ryan. And, you know, that team is still ways away from potentially adopting an identity like the Tennessee Titans of being a run first since, you know, the new head coach coming from that system, they don't have that running back that is going to be able to do that. So as long as Matt Ryan is there, Calvin Ridley is very, very safe as a top-tier wide receiver. I like him at any point in the second round, early second round, middle of the second round. If you get him any point later, that's an absolute steal for Calvin Ridley. Falcons are continuously top 5 in pass attempts. Ridley did it last season with Julio Jones, without Julio Jones, and now without Julio for the entire year once he was traded. Obviously, I think that's going to open up even more opportunities for him. So I really, really like Calvin Ridley this season. But let's wrap it up here. 15th overall with one Justin Jefferson. What he did in his rookie season for the Minnesota Vikings, absolutely astounding. Even more so when you consider that he kind of had a slow start to the season where the Vikings didn't really feature him up until, you know, like 3, 4, 5 weeks into the season. But the talent, undeniable. He is the number 1 wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. You know, he kind of overtook Adam Thielen in that role his rookie season. I think he's got a higher upside in terms of yardage, receptions, touchdowns. Maybe we'll see. That was really one of the main reasons why Thielen was fantasy viable last year because he had so much success in the touchdown department. But I think it's going to kind of equalize this season. Yes, Justin Jefferson is on a run-first team with Dalvin Cook, but he is the best wide receiver on that team. You know, I think he's a very, very good value for where you're going to get him. If you want to make the argument that you should have somebody like an Antonio Gibson or a Jonathan Taylor here, I absolutely would have, again, no problem with it. To me here, I'm just kind of taking that PPR aspect into account and just highlighting what type of value you are getting at the wide receiver position at this point in time. I still think Justin Jefferson will be able to put up similar stats to what he did in his rookie season. I think he's only going to get better. Thielen is still good enough to take away, you know, coverages from Jefferson, and Dalvin Cook will keep opposing defenses honest as well. So to me, Justin Jefferson is a wide receiver one that if you can get at the end of the second round is an absolute steal. But with that, we wrap up this breakdown of our top 15 overall players for 2021. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? Along with any other questions you guys might have, I'll do my best to answer them all. And again, if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you can want at a great value. Details in the description. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in future videos.